And we are live. I'm super excited to have my next guest on. He's the CEO and chairman of the Black Diamond Group. Welcome to the podcast, Trevor.
Thank you, Joe. Happy to be here.
Well, I really want to dig into your story. I think it's really fascinating. I think you have a ton of golden nuggets to share. You've been an entrepreneur through and through your whole life, and you're actually building a new entrepreneurial venture with LodgeLink, but we'll get into that. But before we do, I'd love for you to share your background and who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, I'm, as you mentioned, chair and CEO of Black Diamond Group, and we have a portfolio of related companies, so Box Modular, Britco, LodgeLink, Schiavi, etc. I've been an entrepreneur for, I would say, my whole life. I sort of came to the realization about 20 some years ago when I stepped out on my own and acquired our first business. And from there, I think I've built, run, partnered in about 35 to 40 different businesses over that period of time. So born and raised in Canada, moved around quite a bit. Born in Vancouver, grew up mostly in Montreal, finished high school here in Calgary, went to University of Toronto. So I guess I'm a Canadian, but I relate most to Calgary and my wife and myself and our family have been based in Calgary for the better part of 25 plus years. So Calgary is home.
That's great to hear. And you mentioned that you're an entrepreneur your whole life. I'd be curious to know have you always had the entrepreneurial bug when you were from youth to now, or from your past as a youth?
I think so. I was always interested in business, and I think it connects. My dad had an interesting story. He started with a small Calgary company called Atco when they were still in Don Southern's backyard up on Child Avenue. So my dad left Drumheller, answered an ad in the Calgary Herald. They were looking for a painter to work in the backyard when they were building trailers. So he started there and ended up running one of the Atco companies based in Montreal, which is why I grew up there. But those guys, and it's most of your listeners probably know the Atco story, but in those early years when they were building that company, and when the senior guys would come to Montreal, they would often stay at our house. That's the way it was done back then. And they'd sit around the dining room table, and as a younger kid, 8, 9, 10, I would just sort of hang on the corner of the table and listen to them. And it just seemed exciting, and they were passionate, and it seemed important. And I think from that point, I just wanted to be a business guy. And so, I would do snow blowing, and I had a paper route, and cleaning pools, anything. And I would organize, and I would say I had a company from early on. And then later on in high school, I actually did have cleaning companies here in Calgary, and we did landscaping and for restaurants along the Macleod Trail and stuff. And we kind of had some proper going concerns and employed some other kids from high school. And so I think in hindsight, I've always been interested in business and interested in building businesses and doing transactions, but it wasn't all that clear early on. I was focused on going through school, wanted to get a law degree, et cetera. And ultimately, I guess you always go back to what your core passion is once you realize what it is. And for me, it's business, and more than that, just interested in starting and building, and there's so many aspects to it that make it very, very engaging. So
it sounds like you got the entrepreneur bug from a very young age. From from one of the things I read about your background is that you really believe sport has the power for change. So I'm curious, did you participate in any sports growing up, or were you just fully in business?
No, I played sports when I was young. Not overly talented at any particular sport. I played hockey. I still play hockey. The team I'm on today, we've been together for I think we're in our 30th year together. So I'm still active. I've always loved sports, followed sports. When I was in university, I was involved in the CIAU Vanier Cup organizing committee. And I continue to be currently a governor of the Canada Sports Hall of Fame and the Order of Sport for Canada. So allows me to stay engaged. But unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I discovered what my talent was. Unfortunately, it wasn't sports. I'm a big believer in what sports can teach, especially young people, in terms of teamwork and collaboration and working together to win, or even in individual sports, the dedication and just the level of perseverance to be really successful in sport, I think, are great skills that are learned and can be applied in many different ways. And the honor in sport, sportsmanship or sportspersonship, I think it's so well into into those aspects that make great cultures, whether it's business cultures or more broadly. So yeah, big believer in sport and youth in sport and what it teaches.
No, I totally agree with you. I actually played varsity football at the University of Alberta, so I could definitely resonate with the positive aspects sports brings to your professional life. You never won a Vanier Cup, but that could be a different story.
Golden Bears, they have won many times, I believe, if I remember the history correctly. So
yeah, in the past, but not during my days. So kind of going back to the business side of things again. Again, you're an entrepreneur through and through. And one of the neat things I see you guys doing right now is building that platform, LodgeLink. I'd love for you to share what's maybe something about LodgeLink that the listeners don't know about and what you guys are up to there.
Absolutely. So LodgeLink is a travel tech platform. And what we focus on is companies that have crew travel. So in part of completing the work that these companies do, they need to move groups of people to places where the work occurs. And often that's in remote areas. If you think of an Alberta perspective, you can quickly think of oil and gas, but there's lots of different industries where they're moving crews to get work done. And it's inherently complicated, which is something that we learned from our Black Diamond company, where we're providing remote lodging and camps, but in physical format, and looking at the inefficiency of the full travel cycle. And that's what we focused on. If we could reduce the inefficiencies, we'd be adding value for the customer and for ourselves. So it is search and book, which is, similar to lots of B2C platforms like an Expedia, et cetera. But it's much more than that, because we're really focused on the mid-office management, the planning, booking, constant changing in people, changing in whether a crew is going to be late or is going to stay longer, and all of that real time, while also trying to help our customers control costs, track those costs to be able to invoice their customers, et cetera. So it's an efficiency software platform that allows for the effective transaction of booking, whether it's hotels or airlines, to match up with where they need to move their employees to affect their work. So it's very complicated. We've taken down something that's there's even more to it than we thought. So it's challenging, but we believe that the value as we solve each of these points of inefficiency. We think it's huge. And the total addressable market in North America, companies spending on travel for crew pre-pandemic was about 63 billion US. So we're focused on a very large addressable market, but a very complicated set of problems. And LodgeLink's making great progress as we build that. So that's the latest, in terms of my business building, and it's within the Black Diamond platform, but really super interesting. We're learning, we're pushing hard, we're solving problems, and I think we're creating value.
Yeah, I always see you guys posting jobs and always hiring, so it seems like you guys are scaling pretty fast.
We're growing greater than 100% per year in terms of revenue. A lot of pressure in terms of building out all aspects of the business processes, teams, et cetera. And we're not copying what somebody else has done, or we believe we're the primary disruptor in this space. And so we have to create everything as we go. And we're working really hard to find talent, especially tech talent, into the city of Calgary, which is exciting for Calgary because there's a great nucleus of a tech community developing here, but also it's not quite large enough yet that we can source the talent we need within the city. And so we do a lot of recruiting externally, trying to bring people here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I see that too. Just a very robust, growing community here in Calgary with the startup scene, the tech scene. It's very exciting. I've actually had a few founders and CEOs from other tech companies on the podcast, and it's just really exciting to see where Calgary's going to be in the next 10, 15 years. So I'm super stoked about that.
And I think it'll change the vibe of the city too, in a positive way. I think it's a different type of energy, different type of skill set, a lot of younger, very educated people, which is not unlike the oil patch was or is, with lots of very educated people, but just, a different type of skill set, et cetera. I think it'd be a great way to create a bit of a renaissance in Calgary. For different respects, and we hope to be a key player in building out that newly envisioned tech community to add to the other great businesses and industries that the city is known for.
Absolutely. I think you guys will. I mean, your track record is awesome. You've been building successful companies in the industrial and construction space for years and years. So I think it'd be no less that this will be a success as well. For the listeners that want to build their own startup, like you mentioned, it's a very vibrant scene, tech scene here in Calgary now. And maybe there's a listener wanting to build their own company. What's maybe something that you've learned in your journey of entrepreneurship that you'd like to share? Maybe a golden nugget that you'd like to share with the listeners?
Oh, well, yeah, there's many different ways I could take that question. I would say from a Calgary perspective, and I've said this all through my career, I worked internationally extensively when I was with ATCO. And I would look at Calgary and how efficient this city is from a business perspective. And sort of this tradition of risk sharing and collaborating, which I think came out of the early days of ranching and true exploration, wildcatting and oil and gas. But I think it lends itself really well to tech startups. So having that investment community that are willing to come together and share in backing young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general, young or old. And I think that's an important part of the nucleus. And there's a lot of people here who really want to help in multiple different ways. And so if you're thinking of building a tech company in Calgary, I think there's many great attributes about this city and sort of the personality of the business center here that lend to entrepreneurship and to incubating new ventures. So I would suggest that. And one of the questions, I rarely get asked, but I think is a super important question on entrepreneurship, and that is, how did you make the decision to start? And I think everything after that decision, for me anyways, and for a number of people who work with me, all came back to that decision. And I was quite successful in my career, and to leave that and make a huge bet on yourself. I mean, it's something I think needs to be better understood and studied, I guess, to a certain extent. I mean, how many phenomenal entrepreneurs just never took the step to get out and build their dreams, so to speak. So, and I still find it that aspect of the initial risk taking to step out and build a really interesting part of entrepreneurialism, but the entrepreneur themselves, I guess, is so all of those young and potential entrepreneurs, I encourage to reach out to. I think you'll find most business leaders very open to sharing their story and giving advice, and I guess that's what you're also helping to do here, Joe.
Well, that was wonderful. Yeah, I mean, the first step's always the hardest step, and just getting started and making that mindset shift of, hey, I'm going to build my future. I'm going to build the future. I'm going to participate in building that awesome tech ecosystem here in Calgary. One thing that always comes up though is it's not always glitz and glam entrepreneurship. I mean, you see on social media people on private jets and popping champagne. That's not really what entrepreneurship is about. It's about building that resilience, grit, and going through the hard times. So I want to ask you, has there been any point in your journey where you've experienced a challenge or maybe even a failure, and what did you learn from that?
Absolutely, and I think you learn a lot in the Black Diamond story. When we went public in 2006 through to about 2014, 2015, we had a 44% annual compounding growth rate as a public company, and increasing dividends every year, enterprise value, over 1.5 billion. I mean, we went public with I think it was a $65 million market cap. And so a lot of hard work, good work went into achieving that. But I think the more impressive work by the team at Black Diamond was what happened after the downturn in 2015, 2016, where our business, we lost about 90% of our revenue in about 18 months as the oil industry slowed down. And so we had to look at the business, fix the balance sheet. Well, the balance sheet wasn't broken beforehand. We were pretty conservative, but what you realize about balance sheets and debt levels is if your cash flow drops precipitously, you can find yourself over levered pretty quickly. So we really had to buckle down and grind it out. And then we put in place a strategy for pivoting the company. And it's really difficult to pivot a company when your primary market is, falling 90% in 18 months. But the team did it, and it's the business is very different today, much more diversified. It's growing really nicely right now in all the business units. I think that work in the middle, when we were under intense pressure, and there's not a lot of rewards at that part of the cycle, in terms of stock options and bonuses and the like. But I think for us, not a complete failure, but a near failure, and sort of the work and just how team building works through that period of time. I think that's what we learned. We learned a lot about ourselves. We learned a lot about the public market. They kind of leave you, as I guess they should, for money managers. Okay, now it's time to cash out, but we're still here and we have to see our way through it. So sometimes your best work is the work that's done in the most difficult situations, and gets overlooked by those periods when everything's going well and everybody's patting you on the back. So we learned a ton through that period, and I think I'm a better business strategist and sort of more risk aware, and perhaps a better business builder than I was without going through it. That being said, would have been nice not to have to go through that.
Sounds like you need to have some level of intestinal fortitude, just stomaching the downturns and kind of bouncing back from from turmoil. But that's interesting. What would you say is maybe your unique skill that's made you become so successful, if you have to categorize into one skill?
I think better than average at selecting people to join my team. I think that's probably made the difference over time. I would say I'm reasonably good at envisioning and laying out a plan, and the accountability around the plan, and personal responsibility. Try to work harder than anybody else. But I think over time, what's benefited me the most is the quality of the people that have come to join me. And maybe they're the crazy ones. I've got a vision. Maybe I'm crazy, but they came. They came to join and try to achieve, that vision or dream. And I think for every organization, the quality of the people in the organization make the quality of the leader, or vice versa. But at any rate, I think that's, for whatever reason, probably been my strongest suit and biggest contributor to my success. What success I've had is the people that have joined my teams.
That's awesome to hear. I think you always hear it time and time again. It's all about the people and the culture. Kind of going back to sports, you can have the best talent, the best skills on your team, but if you don't have that culture, that cohesiveness, that chemistry, it's really hard to exceed expectations and really move past your goals. So it's interesting to hear that, picking people and culture is your strongest suit. Makes sense.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up, because it's one of the questions I like to ask people who've been on winning teams, or even those who have been on teams that should have won, and just say, how do you build that extra element in terms of what makes a team a winning team versus, hey, on paper this is an amazing team but it never worked. And usually the answer is it comes down to one or two people, and then sort of the collective character and chemistry of the people. And I think that's the same for any organization, business included. But it's not an easy formula. You're constantly working at it, trying to find those difference makers, and trying to balance the right type of people working together to get that extra element. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Fascinating. Maybe a psychology degree is the most appropriate for building businesses.
Speaking of helping you through your career, has there been any resources along the way that's really helped you that you would recommend for others looking to really build their business?
I would recommend finding some good mentors. I was very fortunate when I first started out, I wasn't aware of, I wish I was aware of equity sponsors and the fact that you didn't have to mortgage your house and risk everything you have. But we didn't know at the time. But along the way, I found there were a lot of people who were just genuinely interested in what we're doing and willing to help. Certainly within my family, father and father-in-law, et cetera. But externally, one gentleman in particular, Bob Braun, who's a bit of a business legend here in town. As a young guy, I probably pestered him to the point of irritation, but he was so generous with his time and experience and support, and a couple of other people along the way. I just think having that, especially if they're a little bit older and more experienced and have done something similar, and being able to run your ideas by that. I would say with Bob in particular, I'd go and explain a problem, but he would never solve it or tell me what to do. But when I left, I was clear on what I needed to do. And so I would highly recommend mentorship, and the informal mentorship of just reach out and make a connection. And I think that as a resource is as beneficial as anything. I know around the city there's lots of formal programs, et cetera, which are fantastic, but I think the informal mentorship is really powerful, and not just for business, but just generally.
Absolutely, that's a big topic that comes up a lot on the podcast, just finding your mentor, and finding your mentor and having them help you along your journey, because it's really about the people you surround yourself with. For anybody listening, do you have any maybe a tactical piece of advice of finding a mentor, or finding that person that could help you along your way?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And finding the right type of experience and character to match you and what you're doing, I think is super important. And so I don't know that there's a simple answer to here's a formula or here's a list. But over the years, I've had young entrepreneurs reach out and just ask to go for a coffee, and sometimes it's one coffee. A few of them we meet frequently, and they're building great businesses. Why they reach out to me, I don't know, but I'm always interested in what they're doing, and if I can help them or give some advice. And I think you'll find most business leaders with a similar view. I mean, often these are very busy jobs as well, so trying to find somebody who has the time and interest, and there's a good match. I think it's really valuable.
So I only have a couple more questions here for you, Trevor. One thing I really want to see from your perspective is, what are you really proud of that maybe we haven't touched on in the interview so far?
That's a good question. I think I'm certainly proud of the businesses and what they've accomplished, especially through a very difficult period of time, and the growth we're experiencing today as our strategies are paying off. And more broadly, I think we've got a reasonable business environment to operate in, which is good. So from a business perspective, I think we've touched on key things. And personally, the fact that I've been able to do all of this, and I've got great kids and a very supportive partner in my wife, who allowed me to do what I've done, and we worked our family structure around how I needed to work, so that we also spent a lot of time and have a really tight-knit family. So I would say outside of work, I'd be most proud of my kids, and my wife for raising great kids while I was busy building a business, and got to just come and have fun with kids and family. I don't know, joking a little bit there, but yeah, I think in that, if you're able to get the balance and sort of do what you envision work-wise with people you love working for, and you can do it without getting way imbalanced in your personal life, I think that's a goal we should all have. And it doesn't have to be a traditional format, but I think there's lots of different ways to be really effective. And that's been important for us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That work-life balance is extremely important, especially nowadays with the pandemic and people working from home and all that. So it's great to hear that work-life balance is also a part of your entrepreneur routine. So and
it's good. You know, I mentioned playing on the hockey team for so long. Well, we were all early in our careers at the time, so anytime I feel particularly accomplished or something, I just have to walk into that locker room and they put me right back where I should be. And it's I think that's an important aspect of your world as well. So these businesses can just completely engulf you and sort of swallow you up. I mean, especially these days, we could work 24 hours a day. So trying to find that balance, I think, makes you a better business person as well.
Absolutely. Where can our listeners connect with you online if they want to reach out and maybe pick your brain or follow up with some questions?
I'm on LinkedIn or directly through the Black Diamond email address and website. So those would be the most effective ways.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll put those links in the description of the interview. So it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast, Trevor. I really love to end the podcast with asking one question. It's obviously it's a leadership podcast. So my last question to you, Trevor, is what does being a leader or leadership mean to you?
I think leadership means a number of things, but it encompasses responsibility, integrity, setting a good role model or being a good role model, leading from the front, willing to work harder than anybody else, and looking more than just about personal gain, etc., but trying to accomplish something that benefits as many people as possible. I think if you think that way, you have leadership qualities, and we need more leaders today. Hi, I'm Trevor Haynes, and you're listening to Joe Momo Presents.
Thanks again for watching the Joe Momo Presents podcast. For more episodes, check out joemomo.com/podcasts. All right, see you next time.